Hey guys, I am surprised about the controversy surrounding the song Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean. Now, I'm not a Jason Aldean fan. I never heard of him before this controversy, so I don't like him or dislike him. I'm not a fan of newer country music. I think it's too much like rock and too much like other genres. I like older country better, so I don't know a lot of the newer artists. The only reason I know this song is because of the controversy about it. So I listened to it a few times, probably more than a few times, just to see if there's anything really wrong about it. And I don't think there is. Now, there's a lot of people that, not a lot of people, but there's some people that criticize the song for filming in front of a courthouse. Guys, if you look hard enough, you can find so many wrongs with a lot of courthouses. Whether there's, like protests at that courthouse, whether there's crime at that courthouse, whether there's an unjust decision made by a judge or jury at the courthouse. So I think that's kind of going back to what is it like 1930s or 1920s and saying, well, this bad thing happened there, so they shouldn't make a video there. Guys, that's really, really far reaching because you could go almost any courthouse and there'd be a bad decision, there'd be something bad that happened there, something to gripe about. So I don't take that into consideration. Now, Jason Aldean's song, some people say, well, when he says "good old boys," that's code for white supremacists. Guys, I live in a small town, okay? I'm a white guy. That term, that phrase, the majority of the time is not any sort of slogan for white supremacy. That's what like older people call the younger people, good old boys. That they take care of each other. If I need to if I need to move my refrigerator, I can call a good old boy. I can call my neighbor's son, and they'll come and help move my refrigerator. That's in the context of what it's phrased. Guys, if you never lived in a small town, you have no right to judge what that phrase means. That phrase does not have racist connotations to 90% of the people. Now, I said 90 instead of 100 because I can't speak for everybody, but that is not a racial term, and take it from me, someone that lives in a small town, someone that's lived in a small town in Ohio, Illinois, West Virginia. That is not a racial term. That's not a white supremacist term. So the only lyric that I'm confused about is I think it's in the second stanza. Jason Aldean mentions like his grandpa gave him his gun and said that someday they're going to round up. I don't know. It, the whole song is anti-crime. So when he talks about rounding up, well, the first imagery I actually got was, the book of Revelation, the people who don't accept the mark of the beast will be rounded up. But then some people think that, well, he's talking about, well, if people round up and protest, shoot them. I don't think that's what he's saying, guys. I think you're really trying to just mix and match stuff because in the whole context of the song is anti-crime. So when he talks about people rounding up, I think it's obvious they're going to round up and do crime. So and the gun's there for protection against the crime. I wish he would have clarified that line though. I can see where that line might be a little misgiving. And like I said, music and art, it's open for interpretation. When people talk about rounding up, as I said, the first thing I think about is the book of Revelation, and those that don't accept the mark of the beast will be rounded up by the one world government. I think, guys, let me tell you something. My grandmother, she owned a nursing home, and there was, you know, African Americans, they were rioting in the city. And they were coming the riot and they were looting places. And if you're black and you're listening to this, don't be offended, okay? I'm just telling you facts about what happened. The rioters were coming closer and closer to the nursing home. And I had my grandfather sit on the front porch with a shotgun, and my uncle, who was, he was a U.S. Marine, he was sitting on the back porch with a shotgun. I mean, they had to defend the shotgun. And where were the police? They weren't around. I mean, this nursing home with the nursing home residents were in there, and you had this rioters coming closer and closer who were looting, and they were fended to fend for themselves. And this was in the city. And what I get from Jason Aldean's song is that's not going to happen in a small town. In a small town, if you have a protest that turns into looting and they're boarding on something like a nursing home, guys, they're not going to get that close to that nursing home. Those residents will be safe in a small town. In a small town, neighbors, residents' sons and daughters and nephews and cousins, they'll come and they'll form an armed guard. There's almost everything Jason Aldean mentioned was a crime. I mean, if you try to spit in the face of a cop in my neighborhood, guys, you're gonna have like your arm twisted behind your back, handcuffed. You, you're going to jail, and then they might not be too polite about it either. I mean, you might be face down on the concrete with a knee on your neck if you spit on a cop. They don't mess around. And it's factual, guys. It is factual. So I don't see why it's controversial, and I don't see why you'd want to spit on a cop. I mean, isn't that assault anyway? Assault on a cop, on a police officer? Guys, one thing that I don't get, and one thing I've never gotten, is if there's a riot taking place and there's looting in that riot, and there's looting in it, I think it's so unfair that the police, and there could be like police and riot gear right there, plenty enough to stop those rioters, but they let them pacify them by going into like a store, a locally owned store, and stealing TV, stealing food, stealing other stuff. And guys, I think that is so unfair to that store owner. If I paid taxes and I paid city taxes to be in the city, and taxes aren't cheap, what am I paying taxes for? Why am I paying taxes if you're not going to protect me? That makes no sense to me. I think that if there's property, if there's businesses that are being risked, I think police need to form a line. Now, I'm not saying shoot people and kill them if they're going to loot, but shoot them with rubber bullets. Prevent people from looting. I just never got that. And there's some people that will say, well, it doesn't matter about, destroying a business. They'll have insurance. Guys, insurance does not cover everything. And when you also take into account the lost ability to make money on the days that you had to recover for your business to get back on track, and then the extra money that you're going to have to pay for insurance because your insurance rates are going to go high, why does the business owner have to suffer because the government was not courageous enough to protect them who were paying taxes? That always got rubbed under my skin, and you can feel it. And a lot of the people whose businesses were destroyed were black business owners. And guess what they did when they got their insurance money eventually? A lot of them relocated somewhere else. Now, about Jason's Aldean, guys, if you burn an American flag in a small town, now I'm not saying all small towns. I lived in two small towns in West Virginia. I lived in a small town in Ohio. I lived in a small town in Kentucky. Well, actually, it was a big town in Kentucky, a big town in South Dakota, and a small town and a big town in Illinois, and a city in Ohio. So, and I lived in a small city in Texas. So I've been around the place, okay? And, in Texas, I delivered pizza in grad school. So I got to know the area quite well. I can see maybe where I lived in some places, like in Southern Illinois, maybe them not reacting as strong. But guys, in a small town in Ohio or West Virginia, or if you go to Sturgis, South Dakota, they will protect themselves. I don't get why a song is deemed racist if it's factual. And I would be offended if I was a black person and someone automatically thought of a black person when they heard the song. Now, I will say that I think Jason Aldean could have helped himself if during his video he had examples of white supremacist groups. He didn't have that to my knowledge. I know he had all different races on the video, but I don't think he showed like the Confederate or the Nazi flag in a bad way that showed white supremacists. He probably should have done that in hindsight, and I wouldn't. I think they probably should re-edit the video to show that, just to show that they're not showing favoritism. But guys, if you try to burn an American flag in the town I'm living in, there will be a veteran that will prevent you. Now, yeah, you can go sneak up to the courthouse, sneak up and burn one, and no one's going to do anything. But if you like make a big public show of it, you will be stopped. Okay, if you go to like if you have like this big rally and you're going to burn a flag and you let everyone know you're going to do it, veterans will stop you. And guys, in a small town, you can have rallies, you can have homosexual pride parades, you can have BLM parades. No one's talking about protesting, okay? No one's gonna hurt anybody in a small town. Well, I'm not gonna say nobody. There's crazy people everywhere. But you can protest in a small town. It's the crime is the issue. They're not gonna let a protest turn into a mass looting affair. I hope I've explained the song. Something should not be controversial if it is factual. And you can come to a lot of small towns and you're not going to be able to do that type of stuff that you can get away with in the city.